in the woods. He's my dad.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Big Man in the Woods. This podcast episode is all about ticks and Lyme disease. But before we get into the actual interview, I just want to just promote something that I'm actually attending. It's called the Wild Food and Chili Fair. It's down in Malden in Essex on Saturday 27th to Sunday the 28th of June. I'll be down there. I'm teaming up with the Bushcraft Journal. We've got a stall down there. The old man will be down there, Paracord Sam, really cool people down there, Mark the Shark from Shark Tinderbox, Helen from Beaver Bushcraft, Jason Inglemells from Woodland Ways, Will Lord is doing some flint napping and skin tanning and loads of stuff. So it's a brand new event that's happening. It's not actually too expensive actually. For a adult weekend, including camping, is £25, and if you took a family, which is 2 adults, 2 children, that's £24 per ticket. So that's a really cool deal. If you just want to go for the day, an adult ticket on the Saturday is £9, and child, which is under 11 to 16, is £5. Kids under 11 getting free. So the dates once again: Saturday 27th to the Sunday the 28th of June. The Wild Food and Chili Fair down in Malden. I will put a link up on the Big Man in the Woods website. I'll be down there, as I say, loads of people. It's going to be a really cool event about foraging, getting food, how to cook it, some recipes, got some chefs down there, as well as the Bushcraft crew to go down there. I'm actually recording this in my back garden because I recorded the interview a couple of days ago, and I thought I didn't record an interview, an intro, should I say, and an extra podcast. So I snuck out on my Saturday evening while the girls are in bed. I'm sitting in the back garden recording this, and it's really windy night. So let's crack on with the interview. This is Stella from the Lyme Disease Action charity.
Big man in the woods. Big man in the woods. Big man in the woods. And here's your host, Mark Yates.
Okay, so joining us on the podcast this month, we've got Stella. She works for a really cool charity called Lyme Disease Action, and I think the clue is in the title of the charity, what it's all about. It's all about Lyme disease and ticks. So, morning, Stella. How are you?
Good morning. Fine, thank you.
Excellent. So, just a bit of brief background about the charity, please, Stella.
Yes, okay. The charity was formed in 2003 when it became clear to quite a few people that there wasn't any good quality information around about Lyme disease. People met as the internet was starting to make emails and discussion boards quite widespread. And so people scattered around the UK got together, formed the charity, and the aim was originally primarily to produce good quality information on tick removal, Lyme disease, diagnosis and treatment, etc. And we've expanded slightly now, although we're run by only 7 volunteer trustees, so all the work is done by volunteers. And we produce a range of leaflets. We run a conference every year. We have a support line for patients, and also now we've got a good professional medical director. We run a support line for doctors as well. And we hope to be gradually changing the view of Lyme disease amongst health professionals and raising awareness amongst the public.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds nice charity. You just said about the changing the perspective on the medical staff. What do you mean by that?
Well, in the past, health professionals in the UK have been told that Lyme disease is fairly easy to treat if you catch it early, and it's easy to diagnose because the tests are very successful. It is acknowledged and has been acknowledged that Lyme is more difficult to treat if it's not caught early, but in fact there have been very few trials on longer-term treatment and other antibiotics for Lyme disease. So we genuinely do not know the best treatment, the right dose of which antibiotic, and the right duration of treatment to deal with late Lyme disease. Health professionals also, we have numerous reports to our support line saying that my GP told me I couldn't get Lyme disease in Milton Keynes, or I haven't been to the New Forest, therefore I can't have it. And so there is quite widespread ignorance among health professionals. Not necessarily all their fault, in that they have an awful lot to read and know about nowadays. But we're trying to get through and to raise the importance of recognising the rash early, taking the tick off correctly, recognising the rash early, and treating early.
So all about treatment, isn't it? Again, at the early stage.
It is indeed, yes.
Right, so what should we talk about first? Lyme disease or ticks?
Well, the ticks come first, so how about the ticks?
Let's do the ticks then. Right, I've got some top 10 facts about ticks. Let's see if these are myths or the truths, yeah?
Okay.
So ticks bite animals and humans, and they feed off blood, and they need the blood to stay alive. That's a
correct.
fact, isn't it? And the tick saliva contains an anesthetic, which means you don't feel the bite.
That's correct.
Some ticks can live up to a year without a meal.
Yes, correct.
Ticks don't fly or jump. Instead, they kind of just drop off vegetation and then grab someone, or if they brush past the bush or something.
That's right, yes. They have a hook on their leg, so as you brush past, or as a mouse brushes past, they just get caught on the fur or the clothing.
Now, this fact, I hope it's not a true fact, because this isn't a nice one, actually. They like warm places on the body, such as the groins, armpits, and scalp. The back of the knee, the waist, and the buttocks are their favourite areas of the human body. Well,
we don't really know exactly, but they appear to go for protected areas. So behind the knee is definitely a well-known place for ticks to attach. So they need, what they do is to walk along until they detect where they will have a good blood supply. That preferably is going to be slightly protected. How they know exactly, we don't know. We don't really understand how they detect this. But behind the knee is a good place because you've got a blood supply close to the surface of the skin, which is what they need. And it does happen to be protected, and it does so happen that you don't often look behind your knee to see if you've got something there. Interesting point. Yeah, just talking to other people, and yeah, no one actually told me to check behind the knee, so that's a good thing, yeah. Female ticks can lay up to 3,000 eggs at one time. They can lay a huge quantity, and I 3,000 sounds about right, but I've never actually looked up the total. I know it's in thousands. Or counted them. Indeed. There's 20 species of ticks in the UK and 800 over the world. That is probably right. I'd actually have to check with the Public Health England website to know how many different sorts of ticks there are. Okay. Ticks, kind of their life is from April to October? No, they can be earlier than that. Any time when the temperature rises above about 7 degrees, as long as it's not too dry, you might find active ticks. So there's several days in the winter where you might get spikes when you have mild weather for a week. Okay, interesting. Ticks are related to the spider. That's right, yes. And last but not least, my fact of the day is that ticks can be as small as a poppy seed. Absolutely right. They can be so small you can't tell they've got legs until you actually use a lens to have a look. So those, they're the ones that must be really difficult to find them. They are. Those are the ones that have just hatched from the egg, so the first stage in the life cycle. And they are absolutely tiny. They can attach to humans. I've had a larva, which is what they're called, attached to me. And we've got a wonderful photograph that someone sent us of a larva tick attached just beside the eye. Ooh. And it's actually quite difficult to see. Maybe just look like a skin tag or something. Yes, exactly. Wow, that's a scary thought. What is the average lifetime of a tick then? Well, a tick, if you take it from when the egg hatches through to the larva, which turns into a nymph, which turns into an adult, and then finally dies, about 2 years.
That's a long time, isn't it? 2 years.
It is a long time, and a very complex life cycle, because they remain dormant over the winter, so they can survive quite, as we said earlier, quite a long time without a blood meal if there is not a passing mouse, bird, squirrel, etc. And they are also adapted to be able to feed on a range of different animals. So quite a specialised organism.
And even though it likes the warmth, it doesn't get killed out by the cold conditions then?
No, it doesn't get killed. It tends to go dormant. The big thing ticks don't like is desiccation.
Okay.
They cannot stand long periods of being dry.
That's a scary thing, actually. I thought, quite a lot of little bugs that we have get wiped out by the cold season, don't they? But if a tick can't get wiped out, well,
a tick, because it's subject to desiccation, it is actually ground dwelling, and so everywhere on the ground where the ticks live, you'll find leaf litter. Generally, even if it's small shreds of the bottoms of grasses, there are protective places where they can shelter, which are a lot less cold than the ambient temperature where you and I are walking.
Yep. Scary thought. Right, so we've established some facts about ticks. How does one get a tick then? Is it just simply walking through the forest area or through some long grass, and that's it?
Yes, you can either be walking, and the tick will. The behaviour is called questing. So it walks up to the top of a stalk of vegetation, often grass, and it holds out its front legs, which have a little hook on, and as you pass, the tick will get caught. You could be lying down, sitting on the grass. People who do surveys, botanical surveys, for example, will be kneeling down on the ground, counting vegetation in their 1 metre square. And the ticks can sense CO2 and will walk towards you and will latch on.
That's a scary thing. So as simply as even going out with the family for a picnic?
Yes, indeed, yes. Much better to use a picnic rug and have a picnic on that. If you can, put it down on short grass, because short grass, as you can imagine, has fewer places for the tick to hide in and remain as moist as it needs to, because it doesn't like the desiccation. It stays in a protective place, so lots of grass around it. And long grass is very much better than short grass. You find very few ticks on mown grass.
Okay. Just because, it's been trimmed and, as you said, there's no hiding places.
Exactly, no hiding place.
Okay, so we're walking through the grass. Let's say we're going camping or something, and we're going from point A to point B. We've reached our location in point B, and we're now sitting around having dinner and having a nice chinwag kind of thing. What's the steps on checking for a tick?
Checking for a tick, as you go to bed or when you get up in the morning, whenever's convenient time, but preferably soon after you've stopped your risky activity as regards tick, you check yourself. Just the best thing to do to start with before you get to your camping site or where you're going to sit down is to just brush over your legs and your arms. If you've been collecting kindling for a fire, for example, you'll have been putting your hands down amongst the brush. And ticks will therefore have latched onto your hands and will walk a little bit up your arm to find a nice blood supply. They might have latched onto whatever footwear you're wearing, climbed up your trousers, and still be looking for somewhere to settle. So you brush your clothing off as well as you can, away from your campsite or where you're going to sit. And then when you're settling, when you've finished your activity, as you undress, you check your skin. Looking is not as good as feeling. So you run your hands over your skin and you will feel where you think you might have a little scab and you find you can flick it backwards and forwards, and it doesn't come off with a fingernail. That might well be a tick. Have a look at it, take it off.
Stella, why am I feeling all itchy now?
Yes, it's amazing, isn't it? It's got a natural protective reaction.
I'm seriously sitting here listening to you going, ooh, feel a bit itchy now. Okay, so I'm sitting around the campfire, whatever, and I found a tick on the back of my knee.
Right. Well found indeed.
Thank you.
Do you have a tick remover with you?
No.
Okay. The principle for removing the tick is to get it off as soon as possible and as cleanly as possible. You don't want to threaten the tick. You don't want to try to smother it in the hopes that it'll drop off because it doesn't like things, because before that, if you put it under stress, it is more likely to inject its body fluids into you, and that is what you're trying to avoid. So you have to take it off cleanly. Now, some people use fingernails, and the problem with fingernails is because when you try to grasp a tick with your fingernails, unless your fingernails are extremely long and rather like pincers, you are very likely to crush the tick, and that risks injecting more body fluids into you. So the best way, if you have no tool with you, is to take a thread of cotton, and you can often get that from some of your fraying clothes. I mean, we all have clothes or equipment somewhere that's fraying a bit, and you can peel off a piece of cotton or a thread of something from some string you might happen to have, something very fine like a cotton thread. You wind it a couple of times round right at the base of the tick, as close to the skin as you can. You're effectively forming a noose, which is going to lift up the body of the tick without actually damaging its mouth parts. So you loop it round, draw it tight, and pull up steadily. You'll find quite a bit of resistance because the barbed mouth parts of the tick are facing upwards, so you're pulling through your skin as these barbs effectively tear a little bit of your skin. So you just do it slowly and steadily, and the tick will come out.
Sounds graphic.
It has worked.
Ah, no, that's very good.
It does work.
I wouldn't say most of the, well, a high majority of the camping bushcrafter guys all carry some spare paracord. And I don't know if you know paracord, but if you unravel paracord, it will have numerous tiny strands of more or less like cotton. So that's something that we can use.
Yes, that's excellent.
Using alcohol, burning them off.
No, definitely no. Puts the tick under stress. You don't want to do that.
So that's an old,
That's an old wives' tale,
yeah.
And has been handed down. Lots of people think Vaseline. Even some NHS surgeries have said, we'll put Vaseline on and it'll fall off of its own accord. Well, it will eventually fall off its own accord, but not before it's done you some damage.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so just before we've done the removing of the tick, I told my mate, hey, I've got a tick on the back of my knee, and he searched his kit, and he has actually got a tick remover.
Brilliant. There are two main sorts of ordinary tick removers. There's a little hook device, and there's a noose device. With both of them, the aim is to get hold of the tick as close to the skin as possible. And these soft plastic devices are designed to be twisted. So if you've got a device, make sure you have read the manufacturer's instructions on the back of the packet, because that tells you generally to slot the device over or under the tick, depending on what it is, to twist and pull upwards.
And when you say pull upwards, are we talking vertically or pulling up towards up to your head, kind of?
No, vertically from your skin.
Yeah.
So if it's
up
behind your knee, outwards, as it were.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so we've successfully removed the tick. How do we dispose of this tick?
Well, ticks are designed to survive, and so they have the ticks that we have in the UK that transmit disease, that can bite humans, are what's known as hard ticks. And they have a hard scutum on their back, which is very resistant to crushing. Like you have to use a very hard implement to crush a flea, exactly the same with a tick. Now, if the tick isn't engorged, you can simply put something over it and crush it with try with the back of a spoon or something like that. You're out in the woods, so you don't actually have a loo that you could flush it down, which is one option for people in their houses. And so you want to kill it. You don't want it to just put it aside so that it can walk back and attach to you again. So put it on a hard surface, cover it with something, and crush it with the back of a very hard implement. And you'll be able to tell whether you've killed it or not, because when you lift your covering, it'll either walk away or it won't.
And then I guess throw it on the campfire.
Actually, you're quite right. Just dropping it into the campfire would do the job for you. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. If it's an engorged tick, so it's been there for some time and it has swollen with your blood, you don't want to risk crushing it where you might get spattered, and they can be very messy when they're large like that.
Okay.
But just dropping it on the campfire is perfect.
So yeah, maybe putting a bit of tissue or a bit of paper or something and then dropping it on the campfire.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so we've removed the tick. Next morning we're waking up a bit feverish, not feeling the best.
Well, if that's what you feel, it's probably not because of anything that tick last night gave you.
Okay, that's good news.
Lyme disease, but it might be a tick that you picked off the previous weekend or a fortnight ago.
Okay.
On average, symptoms appear about 10 to 14 days after the tick bite. So time for you to have got home and forgotten you had the tick bite.
Yeah. That's a long incubation period, isn't it?
It is. The bacteria that causes Lyme disease, Borrelia, it reproduces very slowly, and it's not generally carried around very much in the bloodstream, which is one way of quick dispersal in a body. It very quickly goes from the bloodstream into tissues and travels through the tissues, which is probably why it takes some time to set up the disease process.
Wow. So, what are the symptoms of Lyme disease then?
Well, the early symptoms, you might get a rash. UK studies, because we're not very aware of this, UK studies show that people who've caught Lyme disease, about 1 in 3 didn't see the tick and didn't see a rash. There's some thought that some species of the bacteria don't cause a very obvious rash, but we don't actually know. But at any rate, you might get a rash. And that will appear roughly, as I said earlier, about 10 to 14 days after the tick bite. When you took your tick off, you were left with a little red mark because your skin's been punctured, it's been torn apart by removing this tick, and so that has to heal. So this little red mark heals, in my experience, probably about over 5 to 6 days, probably faster in younger people with young skin and slower in older people with older skin. And after that has faded, then you get the Lyme disease rash, and it's just a redness spreading out usually from where the tick bit, but not always. It's wherever the bacteria hits the skin tissue. So it might be a few centimetres away, might be round the back of your leg, not the front of your leg. So it's worth just watching in other places as well to see if you get a rash. This rash, it can form a ring that just expands outwards, clearing in the middle, and that's what's known typically as the bullseye rash. But quite often it stays a solid red in the middle, and so you get a red filled circle which spreads. It's not hot usually, it usually doesn't itch, and so often people ignore it because it's not really a problem. But it is evidence of a problem. So if you get a rash, you do need to see a doctor. If you're away somewhere and can't see a doctor, take a photograph of the rash so that you've got evidence that you've had it. And the symptoms that can come with a rash or shortly after are basically feeling flu-like, not very well, a headache, achiness, unusual tiredness, not just because you've been walking all day, but more tired than that. Quite often people suffer from sound and light sensitivity. And those are the main early symptoms. Can be all sorts of other things like dizziness, but the main early symptoms are feeling flu-like. And if it's in summer and you've had a tick bite, put 2 and 2 together and go and tell the doctor that 2 and 2 makes 4.
Absolutely. So is it a case of going to A&E, or we can wait a few days to get a GP appointment?
That's a very difficult question. You should probably go to a minor injury unit and try and see a doctor fairly quickly, because the sooner you don't know what this bacteria is doing in you.
Yep.
It might be the species that actually travels through the nerves and can affect things fairly fast. And the sooner it is stopped in its tracks, the better. So if you can't get an appointment with a GP for some time, you can try the telephone to the GP and say, I've had a tick bite, I had a rash, and these are my symptoms. And you might get a telephone prescription. That is possible. But if you can't see a GP for some days, then go to A&E or a walk-in centre.
Okay, fantastic. What's the normal treatment for Lyme disease?
It's treated with antibiotics because you need to kill the bacteria. If you're over 12, then it's usually doxycycline, which has good penetration to all tissues in the body and also to the spinal fluid, because it's possible that the bacteria might be starting to get into the spinal fluid. And so that is doxycycline, and you would get a 100 milligram tablet or capsule, and you'd have 2 of those a day. That's the usual treatment for Lyme disease in adults. In children, doxycycline can affect growing teeth, and it can stain them. And so they're given amoxicillin, as are pregnant women for whom doxycycline is contraindicated. So normally it would be doxycycline.
And how long will the treatment last for? Is that a week, 2 weeks?
It would usually be 2 weeks. If it was, say, a good week after your first symptoms appeared, or more than that, then 3 or 4 weeks would be preferable.
Okay. Fantastic. So left untreated, what can Lyme disease cause to the body?
Well, as I said, the bacteria travels through the tissues, so it can get to any tissue. It can affect the eyes, it can affect the heart, it can affect the brain, it can affect any of the nerves, which of course control all the activities in your body. So affect the hormones that are produced and so forth. So it can cause a huge range of symptoms. And that's why it's actually very difficult to diagnose. If someone ignored the rash or didn't see it and has then got multiple symptoms, then these symptoms overlap those of many other conditions. I mean, aching, flu-like symptoms. You don't know a tick, you don't know a rash, so you don't say that to the GP. And things that cause problems with the eye and dizziness, balance problems, pain in your face, numbness and sensitivity in your fingers, numbness in your feet, all sorts of things like that. Very difficult to diagnose unless you can connect it to a tick bite, and then it all falls into place.
So Lyme disease, can it cause death?
It rarely causes death. It used to be said that the main cause of death, or the only cause of death from Lyme disease, was heart block. So when the nerves that control the heart are affected and the heart stops, that can obviously kill you. That is not very common. You usually get some effects on the heart first, which are then, some people have had pacemakers inserted, I should say, and that cures the problem but doesn't stop the Lyme disease. So usually it's detected early. It doesn't usually get as far as complete heart block. The other cause of death has been suicide. Lyme disease can affect the brain through the hormones and things that it's affecting in the rest of the body that flood the brain or don't go to the brain, depending on what the effect is. And people who have been given some treatment but inadequate treatment, and a doctor refuses to consider Lyme disease any further, because of its effect on the brain, it can cause psychosis. People can have psychotic episodes, and deaths from suicide because of Lyme disease are known.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Not a nice disease.
No. It's a bit of a terrible disease.
Yes. But those cases are rare, but they happen.
So in the majority of people have this flu-like symptoms, tiredness, headache, muscle ache. That's the majority of the symptoms that people get.
Yes, and perhaps tingling, numbness, sometimes itching.
Hands, yeah.
So the peripheral nerves being affected and causing funny feelings in your hands and legs, yes.
Not a nice thing to catch then, I guess.
No, it isn't. No, quite debilitating. But if you catch it early, quite a dramatic response to antibiotics in the first few days.
And the ticks that we're talking about, they're the normal ticks that you're warned about if you have a cat or dog. Is that exactly the same thing?
They are, except that the tick goes through 3 stages in its life after the egg. It hatches into this tiny nymph, where I said you actually can't see the legs unless you use a magnifying glass, or you're nicely short-sighted, and then you can. That feeds on a small mouse and then drops off and it molts and it turns into a nymph. And the nymph is slightly bigger, the size of a pinhead, and that will feed on things like pheasants, squirrels, and humans. The nymphs then, having had their single blood meal of a few days, will drop off. They'll molt into the adult stage, which is considerably bigger, and it's the adults that will attach to a cat, a dog, a deer, a sheep, animals like that, so larger mammals. So, yes, it is the same tick that attaches to the dog, but it's usually a different life stage. The cats and dogs, for some reason, attract the adults, whereas humans get bitten by the nymphs, which are smaller. The main tick is the sheep tick, so called because it is found on sheep, but is also found on a wide range of other animals, including cats, dogs, and humans. There are other ticks in the UK that carry Lyme disease and can bite humans, and the 2 main ones, which actually look very similar, you need to be an entomologist to see the difference between some of these ticks, but the other 2 ticks are the hedgehog tick and the fox or badger tick. Now, just the name of those ticks, hedgehog tick, badger tick, fox tick, tells you that these ticks might well be in an urban area. Sheep tick, you think, oh, that's the countryside, I don't need to worry. But actually, when you get home and you suddenly realise you need to clear out your garden shed, you may well get hedgehog ticks attaching to you, because that's the sort of place that hedgehogs like to go. So although when you're out in the country, you've probably just got the sheep tick, you do have others when you get back home to your garden.
So here in London, we have a high chance of getting some sort of tick then?
I don't know whether I'd call it high. You certainly have a chance.
A chance, okay.
Because the ticks don't like vegetation, they're not going to be or will very rarely be on a concrete pavement.
Yep.
Right? But they will be in your garden, or might well be in your garden.
And
they feed on birds. They feed on mice.
Okay. We have hedgehogs here. We have lots of foxes here in London. So,
yes,
we've got to be careful.
You do.
So if a cat and a dog can have the tick drops, is there anything that the humans can take then? Not
yet. We are, oddly enough, very much more careful about what we give to humans and what we put on humans. And so far, there is no vaccine against Lyme disease, and there is no protection that actually kills the tick on you. You can use acaricides, which will repel the tick. So you can spray your clothing, you can spray or put a lotion on your legs or your arms. And that is practical if you are happy to put the chemicals on you. You need to read the instructions very carefully. DEET, which is used, is generally safe, but some people do have adverse reactions to it, and it can damage synthetic clothing if you put it on the fabric. Fine on cotton. There's another formulation which uses picaridine, and that's lower toxicity than DEET and doesn't damage synthetic fabrics. So sunglasses, for example, you might have put this stuff on your hairline to repel midges as well as ticks, and the DEET might damage plastic sunglasses. Picaridine won't do that, but there's some thought that picaridine may not be as effective as DEET. Different studies have shown different things, and really we don't know. And the bottom line is that whatever you do, don't be lulled into a false sense of security. Don't think, I'm using repellents, they'll all be repelled. The tick will find you. So the bottom line is check yourself when you've been in a risky situation.
Fair enough. Is there any other precautions that we can take while kind of walking in the outdoors?
Well, you can stay away from long grass. You can keep out of shrubberies. In theory, people say that if you tuck your trousers into your socks, you are less likely to have a tick. But actually, no one's tested the difference between bare legs and trousers. And it is possible that a tick might actually be more able to just hook onto your passing trousers tucked into your socks than they are able to latch onto your bare skin. We don't actually know that. So once again, you might follow instructions and tuck your trousers into your socks, but don't let that lull you into a false sense of security again.
Because, yeah, I'm just reading what we've got here. So people are saying tuck your trousers into your socks, wear gaiters, long sleeve clothing to cover all areas of skin. But as you're just saying, that might not be the case.
That might not be the case. What it does do is it makes it more difficult for the tick to reach your skin. So the tick will be wandering around on the outside of your clothing, and you should therefore be able to brush it off.
Yeah.
Whereas if you haven't got your trousers tucked into your socks or you're not wearing gaiters, then the tick will latch onto your sock and simply climb up your leg. It's got easy access. So you're trying to prevent the tick getting to your skin. And so wearing the clothing, yes, that delays the tick getting to your skin and gives you more chance of brushing them off before they find a suitable spot. So it's good advice, but it's not absolutely perfect.
Oh dear. So the rest thing...
it shouldn't stop you doing what you do and enjoying the countryside and being out. Being outside is really important to us as human beings. It affects our physical well-being and our mental well-being, and it is really important. Studies on UK ticks have shown that in all the places looked at, between 0 and about 20% of the ticks are carrying disease. So the odds are actually in your favour.
Okay. Are there any hotspots in the UK? Well,
as a charity, we don't like to talk too much about hotspots because, as I said right at the beginning, doctors have been known to say you can't get Lyme disease if you haven't been to the New Forest or Thetford Forest or somewhere. And that's as I have said, that's not so. The hotspots are wherever you have got a good microclimate for ticks and a good reservoir of wildlife for the ticks to feed on to pick up Lyme disease from the mouse and pass it on to you at the next feed. So there are lots of hotspots, but they are local hotspots. And if you're going out into woodland, the woodland is very probably a hotspot because you've got shade, you've got moisture from all the vegetation, you've got a good supply of wildlife, and you've probably got not only small mammals which carry the Lyme disease, but large mammals like deer, foxes, badgers, etc., and pheasants, which will support a large population of the adult ticks and allow lots of eggs to be hatching in the spring about now.
So now is the kind of one of the starts of the season there. It's getting warmer now, more people are out camping.
Yep. As the weather improves, we've got moist vegetation, which takes a long time to actually dry out, even if it stops raining now. And we've got the temperatures rising. You'll find the nymphs around, and the larvae will be hatching. All the ticks will be out there.
Oh dear.
But it's not all bad.
It's not all doom and gloom, though. No.
Indeed.
So, any advice on where we can get the tick removers from? Is there things to look out for in the tick removers? As a, I know obviously you can get cheaper versions.
Yes.
How do we look for tick removers?
They all vary. If you have a look at our website, we've got a shop where you can see the tick removers, and it describes them and says what we have found in our experience they are useful for, whether you're taking ticks primarily off a pet or off yourself. So you can have a look at that. You can buy them from our shop. Most vets will sell you the little hook tick removers, and I find them very good, except maybe on the very tiny ticks, which are quite difficult to get off. And for the tiny ticks, I use specially made tweezers, which have a very fine point, and you can get close to the skin and just pluck off the tick. So it depends on your personal preference. It depends on how you want to carry this device, because the important thing is you need to have it with you. So if it's a difficult thing for you to carry, you're going to leave it behind. You're not going to bother. But if it's easier for you to carry it, you'll take it with you. So have a look at them on our website and just decide which you think would be best. And then you can source it. There are lots of different sources. Camping shops will sell them as well.
What's the kind of price?
If you buy a tick remover from our shop, of course, you're supporting the charity as well.
Absolutely, yeah. What's the price of a tick remover? What should we be looking for?
They do vary. On our shop, the two cheapest ones are the Otom tick remover, which is the little hook device, and the tweezers, which are the same price, and they, I think, are $5.99 at the moment.
Okay, that's a very cheap price. It's not anything very lavish.
It's not going to break the bank.
No, absolutely no. Are these tools single use as well?
No, they're not single use. If you're just using them on yourself, it's a good idea always to wash them afterwards, just in case you've got bacteria on them, in case you damage the tick and that transferred bacteria. So it's a good thing to clean them with either antiseptic or good old-fashioned soap and water is best. Yes. If you're using them for many people, for example, we sell to several clinics and provide tick removers to clinics, podiatrists who look at people's feet, who don't want to be passing on, say, fungal spores from one person's foot to another person's foot. And they, of course, like steel, so they like the tweezers, which are much easier to sterilize.
Yeah.
But if you're just using it yourself, any tick remover which you can effectively clean with soap and water and antiseptic is fine. So
tick remover should really be kept in your first aid kit, really, shouldn't it?
That's the sensible place for it, yes.
Quite a lot of people that I know, they have a personal first aid pack attached to their belt, just a little pack. So maybe keep it in there or back in your base camp, in your tent or something.
Yes, as long as you know where it is. It's a good thing to have it with you. So if it's slim enough to just be in something that you normally carry with you, then that is probably the best. You don't want to find yourself out on a long trek and worried because your tick remover is at base camp with all your camping gear and it's going to be 6 hours before you get back. That sort of spoils your day when you're thinking about this tick that you discovered at lunchtime. So preferably have the tick remover somehow with you or close at hand.
Absolutely, yeah. So maybe carry it on your person.
Maybe even that, yes.
Yeah, that's great. So Stella, just wrapping the podcast up and the fantastic interview, is there any other little tips and tricks you could tell us about ticks? No, I don't think so. I think the biggest tip is just be aware of them.
it is actually quite a good idea to go out and positively look for a tick. If you take something like a white square of cotton, and it can be a white T-shirt, drag it along the ground for a bit in a place where there is long grass, and just turn it up the other way and see what you can find. Once you've seen a tick and you've spotted these little nymphs and these tiny larvae, then you know what they're like, and you know what they're looking for. Because knowing what you're looking for is really the best protection.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, before we finish, have you got a really random, disgusting fact about ticks and Lyme disease?
A disgusting fact. Well, some people have found them attached to their genitals.
Ouch.
That is a difficult place, both male and female, to take ticks off. But it happens, particularly in very tick-ridden places. The first ticks I really came across, they were really covering the lower part of our bodies because we've been sitting around this is a long time ago, but we've been sitting around in the Highlands of Scotland, and we had ticks over our bodies. Nasty.
Actually, just one more final question. Do they come out during the day or night time?
Both.
Both. Okay.
Yes. They're looking for a meal, and they'll be out there waiting for the meal, whatever time of day it passes. Ouch.
That's not good then. Because, evening time, sitting around the campfire, calming down. Yes. You can't. You've got to be on the look.
Yes. Well, you set up your campfire in a place. I mean, you don't go into the middle of the scrub to set up your campfire.
No,
you've got a clearing of some sort. So the vegetation is drier, it's shorter.
Yep. Okay, excellent. Stella, let's promote your charity before we go. How can people get hold of you?
Thank you. Our website is Lyme Disease Action, all in one word, .org.uk. And you can find all sorts of information if you want local awareness posters, if you want leaflets for yourself to raise awareness locally, to give to your children, to show them what ticks are like. Then there are lots of email addresses on the Contact Us page. There's also a link to our patient support line. If you think you might have Lyme disease, or you might have had Lyme disease, or you wonder what to do about a tick, email us, and we'll try and give you good quality information.
That's fantastic.
We also have a conference. If you're anywhere near Cambridge, we have a conference in September, which is aimed at patients. We do get some health professionals, I'm glad to say, coming, but it's a good meeting point for patients to discuss their problems, what they feel, what they can do to raise awareness. We've got some very interesting overseas speakers coming along this year. So the September conference details are on our website.
Absolutely, and I'll put a link to your website on the podcast website as well.
Thank you, Mark, very much.
Excellent. Well, Stella, thank you once again, and I hope people who've been listening to this podcast have learned a lot about ticks and Lyme disease, but not been scared off to go out in the outdoors, though.
Indeed, the outdoors is very important to us.
Excellent. Well, thank you once again, Stella, and have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Mark.
Excellent.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Big man in the woods is my dad.
Hey, what a cool interview. I hope you weren't like me and scratching and itching all over through that, listening to that. But I hope you learnt lots, and you're going to get out there and do some prevention of ticks, and buy yourself a tick tool remover. A tick tool remover, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it? A tick tool remover. They're a couple of quid. I bought mine on Amazon, I think, for like £3.50, and I got two. And they're like a twist and a pull-up. And in fact, I bought another packet to give away to you. All you got to do is send me an email, mark@bigmaninthewoods.co.uk, with the title Tick, Tick, Tock. Tick, Tick, Tock in the email subject. We'll run that till the end of the month, and I will pull one out of the hat, and you will win a fresh, never been used tick remover. Okay, cool. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. Head over to the website to find out some more information. It is lymesdiseaseaction.org.uk. lymesdiseaseaction.org.uk if you want to find out some more information, or maybe send them an email if you've got a question that we didn't answer in this podcast. But I hope you got lots of information and enjoyed this podcast. Once again, just before we go, the Wild Fair and Chili Festival, Saturday 27th to 28th of June down in Essex. I will hope to see you there soon, and if not, I will speak to you on the next podcast. Don't forget, head over to iTunes, rate this podcast for me, and we'll fly up into the iTunes chart and get to number 1 at some point. Right, I will see you next one, which is going to be recorded next weekend. I'm away with some scout leaders up in Leicestershire, so we're going to go up there and see what the boys up that way do. Alright, well, hope you don't get bitten by a tick, and don't forget, send me that email for your chance to win the tick remover. Email me, mark@bigmanofthewoods.co.uk with a subject title of Tick Tick Tock. Alright, over and out. Have a good one.